podcast show. We're bringing in three guests today, and we're just looking to have a good time, spread some awareness, spread some different thoughts and different ideas. I have two different resources, two different very special organizations that came out, and we have a special guest. So we're gonna jump into that. And here's for you, Revision, Charles Rotramel.
Hey there. How are you?
So, I brought you on today to talk about Revision and your wraparound services and the other things that you're doing to help youth that are experiencing juvenile justice, things like that, or foster care or stuff, things like that, and the stuff you're doing at the middle school.
Cool. Great. And we're at Revision right now. And so we might hear noises of young people because we got young people that'll be banging on our door literally, and they're here right now. Thanks for having us, by the way. This is a lot of fun. So I'll just talk a little bit about Revision. So we are a nonprofit organization, and we work with what we call disconnected youth. So we work with young people who are involved in the juvenile justice system primarily. And they're referred to us oftentimes by their juvenile probation officer. So we work in all across the system. So we actually have kids that come here. We operate as a community center 7 days a week now. Kids that live in this immediate area in Southwest Houston, which is where we're located. But we also have 450 volunteers who serve as mentors, and they go into all 4 of the juvenile facilities. Well, now it's going to be 3 because we're closing one of the juvenile facilities for the first time in my career. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Whoa.
And which one? And which one is that?
Burnett Balin Rehabilitation Center is closing.
Okay. BBRC.
BBRC will be no more.
What about BBH? Is that?
It's no more.
Okay,
either.
so all together the
Right.
program is gone.
That program will not be there.
Okay.
So I will soon be able to say we only have volunteers going into 3 facilities, and we hope that it'll go down even further from there. I think it will, with the great new leadership that we have at the county level. And we also are working just on the side with the Harris County Sheriff's Office to create a program for all the 17-year-olds who are in the Harris County Jail. 17-year-olds in the state of Texas, unfortunately, are treated as adults. And right now, those 17-year-olds there's about 92 17-year-olds in the Harris County Jail today. And they are not separated in any way from the other adults in there, which is a violation of federal law. And it's also just inhumane. It's dangerous. You've got about 20 girls of that population, and the rest are male. We're working with them to create the first 17-year-old unit at the Harris County Jail. So we're hopeful that we'll have that up and running. The Sheriff's Department is committed to doing that, to separating the 17-year-olds and actually creating a specialized program for them. So super hopeful that we can get that up and running in the coming months. And then you mentioned our school program.
Wraparound.
Yeah. So we also work in schools in Houston ISD. So we work in our local middle school, which is down the street from here, which is Jane Long Academy. And we work in 4 other schools around the district. Schools that are identified because they have a large number of students that are suspended or removed to the district alternative education program. Kids that are in the discipline system, right? So those are our kids too.
Could you name those schools?
Sure. So we're at Attucks Middle School in Sunnyside. We're at Thomas Middle School, which is in the Sterling High School feeder pattern, which is off of Selinsky, sort of in that same South Houston area. And then we'll be moving into Meyerland Middle School, which is a local middle school to us here as well, and we'll be moving into some other schools in the 2019-2020 school year too. So, and we'll be at the district alternative education program for the first time.
Could you tell us how to how do you qualify for those services?
Sure. So there's 2 ways. One is if you're a student that is experiencing discipline issues. So we are trying to interrupt the school to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to identify the students who are the most victimized by that. So we try to get principals, actually, because it's the principal who's making those final decisions about where to send kids, suspend, put them out on the street, send them to the alternative school. So we try to get those referrals directly from the principal. And then the other place is from juvenile probation. So a lot of times those are the same students.
Mm-hmm.
They're on juvenile probation, or they're involved in the juvenile justice system, and they're also being suspended or removed. That's our sweet spot. That's the revision kid.
Okay.
And so we also take self referrals, by the way. So because we're operating now as a community center, we have a lot of kids that just come here because they know they need to be here. They like being here. They want to be a part of what we're doing, and that's perfectly fine. Right? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We think that's just as valid as being referred by one of our referral sources, because if you're raising your hand and saying, I need support, I need to be here, then we want you to be a part of the community as well. So around here, we do all kinds of activities. So soccer is sort of our signature thing.
Yes.
We just won the state championship at the highest level of U.S. youth soccer. But we also do, for some of our younger kids, we do a softball program. We have a basketball program. We just started a book club, which we have these weird signs on the wall that are put here by the Harris County Public Library. So we just started a book club, which is actually taken off, so surprisingly. And we have a girls group. We serve meals here 7 days a week now, so kids can come here and eat. And those meals are prepared by some of our own students.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really trying to create a community vibe where this is home. It's a safe place.
And so these are after school programs, or?
Well, it's all the time. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It is after school when school's on, but it's also on the weekends. It's on holidays. It's 24/7. We've got people here all the time.
So do they have a summer program going on this summer?
There is a summer program here. Actually, several different summer programs are operating here. So we have our own. And then there's also one that the church here, we're located inside a church.
Mm-hmm.
So the church here, which is St. Luke's United Methodist Church, operates a summer program. You probably saw the younger kids when you walked in. So they're here too. And then Connect is a group that we're involved with. We're a member of Connect, and that they have a summer program as well. So the Y is next door, and we're partnering with them. They have a summer program, and we've combined all those forces. So probation is involved with our summer program and with their summer program. So we're really just trying to collide all those barriers and get our kids connected to other kids that are not necessarily affected by the juvenile justice system, not been involved in the system at all, right? So that they can have friends and peer groups that break through those barriers.
Okay. That sums it up right there. So we have Kelli King Jackson. She's with the Simmons Foundation, and she's the philanthropist of the year, if you ask me.
Thank you.
So she's gonna give a little insight of what she does and how she's out there trying to make sure everybody's all right, like young adults, anybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me on your first episode. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So again, I'm Kelli King Jackson with the Simmons Foundation, and we provide grants and funding to nonprofits in Houston. And we are currently able to support the Harris County Youth Collective's work with the Youth Advisory Board. And so we consider our responsibility a few things. One is that we fund work in community that directly reflects what young people say that they want and need to address the challenges that they're facing in their life. The other thing is we take really seriously learning how to be a good collaborator with young people. And so we've done a few different things to be better listeners with young people. Last year, we had Youth Advisory Board members from the Youth Collective who helped us review fast pitches, which is something that people do when they want to receive a grant from the foundation. They tell us what is their work. And after we listened to the nonprofits say what they wanted us to financially support, I met with the youth advisory board members at that time, and they gave feedback to say if they felt like, based on the needs of youth, this was something that we should think about in terms of our funding. And it was hard because some of the recommendations that they had as adults, we thought, oh, that's awesome. Children need that. And the young people were like, yeah, that's not what we want. We want employment. And we didn't hear these providers talking about employment, or we need better housing options. And we didn't hear that organization talking about that. And so as a team, we had to take it seriously that we said we wanted to hear from young people. And just because the young people didn't say what we wanted to do, that we weren't going to go do something different, that we were going to keep true to our word and really listen to those young people and give those organizations an opportunity to be a part of our portfolio. So that was a big learning opportunity for us. And then I think the other is that we recently hosted a youth organizer convening. And so this was only for young people 16 to 30 who are very active in their community. They don't necessarily get paid for the work that they do, but they're really doing very important work in Houston, trying to make their communities better for other young people. And we just were there to listen. So we didn't drive the agenda. We didn't tell them what they had to talk about. It was just us hearing what is happening in community. And we got to meet new young people, hear about new work that's happening. And we're taking that information that they shared with us and thinking about how do we make grants and how do we decide who we're going to fund. And then my personal goal for us as a foundation is how do we start funding more youth-led work, not just folks who want to partner with young people, but like how do we fund work that young people are doing already, uncompensated? How do we fund that so that they can make a living wage, meet the needs of their family, but also continue to do really good work in Houston? And so we're really excited about what we're seeing in the community. And I think that watching adults learn how to work with young people, right? That's part of what we see our job is to bring trainings and technical assistance to nonprofits to help them learn how to do that, right? I think as adults, we often think we know what is best for young people, and we don't take the time to stop and ask young people first. Usually what we do is we say, oh, this is a really good idea. This is how we want to do it. And we're like, okay, let's go find 4 young people and ask them to tell us that this is okay. And then we blame young people when they're like, this is whack. We don't want to do that, right? And then we say it's their fault. They weren't ready or they didn't want to do it. And so we're trying to help other adults learn how to be better listeners and be better partners with the young people.
Okay, I like that. So we also have one of our own finest, and she's from Harris County Youth Collective. She's like our special guest. She's also transitioning out of foster care, and she's been just like YB. Like we finally got employed, and they're moving to actually have youth led and youth do things in the community, meet the community where they're at, instead of us going up in different places and just telling them what we think, and they just sending us home to basically the same thing, and taking ideas and saying, there, you're going to take it and take data, take research and go over it. But she's going to talk about, just give us a little bit about yourself. Why you came today? Why are you here? What pumps you up? what gives you your superpower?
Well, basically, what I guess gives me my motivation. What gives me my motivation to continue in the work that I do is my experiences. So my experiences started when I was in both juvenile justice and CPS system. So I was in and out of placements, RTCs, group homes, things like that, until finally I was about to turn 18 and nobody could help me find anywhere to go. They had no resources. And then finally, actually, Revision, my mentor Helen, who I don't know is watching this or not, but she actually reached out, I think, to you, and you helped me get into the DePel Children's Center. And that was a good start to my life. They gave me funds every month to get my life started. I was able to get a job. I was able to go to school successfully. I was able to be a part of the YAB, which is a perfect foundation.
Tell us a little bit about the YAB.
Well, we are all advocates. We're all entrepreneurs. We all have our own goals.
We're all
and we all work together to reach that goal.
Okay.
And it's perfect teamwork. It's a perfect team. I know you probably want to compliment.
Yes.
There's another one in the back. He's hiding. But yes, it's a perfect organization. I'm proud to be a part of it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're gonna get into a little bit. We're gonna get into a little bit of questions I prepared for some of the guests that are here coming with us. So this one goes a little bit for Kelli. I want to know, what are effective and reliable resources that you know of that help any community and all young people that are struggling in the system?
Ooh,
That's a big question.
that's a big question, and honestly, not that many. If I have to be honest, I think that, and it's not because people don't have good intentions. I think a lot of folks have good intentions and they want to help young people who've been involved in systems. I think where I feel like our community is falling short is we don't make space for people who've had lived experience in systems to then go through their own healing journey and give back and lead the work. Right. A lot of the people who lead our work in our community have not had a lived experience.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that they can't be good at it, but there's a knowledge level and an empathy level that you just can't connect.
So basically, school can't teach you how to basically go through what the people with lived experience went through.
Right. There's an element that's always going to be different and missing. Right. And we have to acknowledge that and be okay with that. And we have barriers. Right. So if I've been involved in the system, there's some campuses I can't even volunteer in my child's school. Right. So there are nonprofits who have barriers that they can't employ folks who've had lived experience. Right. And so if we want to do better and make our programs really have meaningful impact, we're going to have to start to address some of that and really hold ourselves accountable to walking the walk and figuring out what barriers are there so that folks can get connected to services. I'll also just lift up the YAB again, because I think that the door knocking and canvassing that y'all have been doing have been extremely illuminating. I think engaging with young people who are currently in the system, because y'all have been a part of that journey, makes them trust you. And you're able to get information that helps us as folks who are decision makers be accountable for what is not happening, right? So people always say, oh, I was in the system and they didn't do X, Y, or Z. And I often hear adults in meetings say, that's not true. That's not how it works. Those resources are available. But young people are consistently saying, but I didn't get that. Right. And so I feel like when you all have now data of people right now who are in the systems who are not getting things that we've already allocated, my tax dollars are funding it, my grant money, my foundation's grant money is funding it, and those services are still not being delivered. But now I actually have data, and I can go and say, this is not just one young person's story. This is a thing. And we as people who have the power to make decisions have to be accountable for figuring out why this isn't happening. And we haven't been able to do that before because we haven't been sitting in partnership with young people. I think that there are a lot of great organizations that provide mentoring or who are trying to get young people connected to housing. But
just so many barriers and qualifications that you have to meet in order to get certain systems. So there's always a loop.
Yep.
Just like with the birth certificate, I had went so many problems just because I had an ID, but I have no other paperwork to actually get it. So therefore, I'm out there having to scrabble and figure this out, and they still send you around. Like,
Yep. And I've seen the difference between a navigator who understands what that feels like, and come hell or high water, they're gonna figure out how to get you your documents. And I've seen the person who hands you a flyer and says, "Go take that flyer and figure it out."
Yeah.
You know which one is more helpful.
Yeah, I asked them. I was like, so if somebody stole your wallet and somebody stole all your paperwork, what would happen? What would you do? Would you be sincere and be pleading up here? Because I'm begging you to give me my birth certificate. That's all I need. It's me. I got all these documents that got my name. And you still can't, like, be sincere. You know that I don't have the documents that I need. So
to move to the next level.
Just help me out this one time. I know you don't get this. Nobody. I know somebody that's still an identity ain't finna come up here and beg you to give me these documents. Yeah. So you gotta meet people where they're at. You gotta sometimes you just can't be stuck up and mad all the time.
Yep. And one of the ways we learn like where there are those gaps is when at our foundation we do site visits. And so I take the information that I learned from y'all and I ask those questions of my grant partners. and I asked them, how are youth a part of your planning? Are you talking to young people as you're planning? What does a youth intake look like? Is it the same as an adult intake, or is it in consideration of different barriers and different experiences? And so the information and the data, I feel like, that we've learned from the Youth Collective Advisory Board has really helped us be better about making sure that we're asking organizations the right questions that will help us better understand and fill in some of the gaps in services.
Okay. Well, for Charles, I have I go a little bit off topic because I don't know, for some reason I my passion is with foster care is more like my topic, not my topic, but my passion, because I went through it so much, and I still have family members that I call them my family, brothers, sisters, that's still in the system, that's still in foster care, foster homes, RTCs, residential treatment centers, shelters. I had a friend that she's going through it. She's going through it, and she couldn't get to any shelters because of her child. It's like a barrier for her because she can't get into shelters. So this question is more like dealing with foster care. What would you see as host homes what would you see as host homes transitional living? What would you see host homes being if they could turn it into transitional living? Like, if transitional living can be host homes provided, how would that look to you?
Right. It's a timely question that you've asked, because this has come up in a lot of the discussions with the Homeless Youth Network. So for some reason, this is a very controversial idea. I don't understand why, because it's a proven model and it's effective. It works, and it's being used in a lot of places. It's just not being used here. So what you're describing as a host home is when a young person gets to a certain age, and that could be 17, that could be 18. They could move into someone's house, and it would not be a foster care arrangement. It would be a more casual arrangement, right? A host home that would help them with that transition, and provide a space for them to live, and also support for going through that transition and transitional planning. Because part of the really hard part, as you all know, I'm very conscious that I'm speaking to the experts here, but for the audience that's not expert, part of the really hard part is navigating that transition from 17 to 18, and trying to gather the paperwork like you're talking about, and trying to figure out the benefits from the system, so that you can access those benefits, and trying to make sure that you have enough money to live, and trying to make a plan moving forward. All those things are really challenging, and caseworkers can help with that to some extent, but caseworkers, as Kelli is mentioning, often don't have the heart to do that effectively. And I think that's where host homes could come in, because here there could be people that do have the heart for that, right? That really that are doing it for the right reasons, not because they're getting some benefit out of it or it's their job, but it's because they want to, they care. It's that caring part that I think is the magic in the host home model. So I would love to see host homes, and I've actually become a strong advocate for that in our Homeless Youth Network work here in Harris County, because the knock on it apparently is that they're not licensed, or
they're not licensed. So basically, host homes are not licensed by anybody. They're not by the state.
Correct.
They're by the state. They're not federal funded. They're just by the state. So a host home, and then you have to own the home. You can't rent anything. You can't rent an apartment. It has to be a house. So but I've heard good things. I heard bad things. I met with St. Ambrose in Baltimore. They talked about host homes, but then you have some people, it's just like a 3-month thing, and then after that they're supposed to get re-rapid housing, and then after that it's nothing. So it's like after 3 to 4 months, no more host home. They're gone. So it was like more in Houston. How could we implement that to be like keep it there, like a host, a casually a home for them to stay, transition out from what the ages, transition living is from 21 to like keep it to 24, young adults 24, yeah. And then move on and help like you have a mentor and a caseworker with a host home.
Right. No, I think it's great. I mean, I think the model and like you say, there's places that it's working. I will point out that when you and I did a session at the Texas Network of Youth Services conference last week, and there was a woman there who attended that session that I had never met before, who runs an organization. She's the executive director of an organization called Heartstrings Youth Village, and they are using host homes. Now they're using it differently than what you're describing. They're using it for school age youth, and they're using it for kids who are not staying with their parents, but they're staying with another family, and they're providing support for those families or those individuals who are providing host homes. So it's different than what you're describing, but at least we've got somebody in our region that's actually doing host homes. So now there's something to start from. Like, I think we can begin that conversation. It's something that the system here is very resistant to. And I just don't understand why.
Because it's more like, they say host homes are more happen in rural areas.
Right.
Instead of urban.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
And yet in New York City, there are host homes.
New York City, Baltimore,
right.
San Diego.
Right. I mean, there's a number of jurisdictions around the country that have these models. So it's a known model. So it just seems like it's not something that people have been willing to consider. But I think we want to consider it, and we want to assist with that.
Yeah, I would just throw in there a couple things that, in my experience in Texas, we are very hesitant about anything that seems like a liability. And I think that is something that we're going to have to really talk through and figure out from a policy perspective. How do we understand that there's risk, if you will, but that risk can be mitigated and can be, you can find ways to deal with that, as other communities have. I think the other thing is, as much as we also need this support for folks who are older adolescents, we also need this for younger adolescents. And we still have some Good Samaritan runaway laws that are barriers for folks to be able to participate in this. And so folks aren't going to want to be a part of this solution if we don't start to address some of that and really think through how do we make sure everyone is protected to be able to be a part of this work. And then I think the third thing is there are also models that are more dormitory style. I think that, what does it look like to have an apartment or two young people living in an apartment together and have the funding be approved by the feds and other entities that allow us to test that out? I had a roommate in my 20s. I couldn't afford to live by myself. It was not always a pretty set of circumstances. But because of affordability, that's how I lived in New York City at the time. And we currently don't have funding streams that really allow for those types of models to be tested as well. So giving a variety of things, and I think adults and policymakers, funders, and young people together brainstorming what is possible and us really trying to find a path forward is going to be important to that.
Let me just jump on one thing that you said, Kelly. And I think I totally agree with everything you just said. I think that what's important, too, is that these programs that need to be created need to have a lot of grace built into them. Mm-hmm. Because what happens now is there are some programs that provide apartments or places that young people can live, but their rules are so stringent that if you violate one rule, you bring a boyfriend home or you're smoking weed one time, you get kicked out. No, that is not the way this can work. This is not going to work that way.
And they also, I think they need to be family friendly. You guys also females that have barriers when they have kids. They have it's like they're telling you not to have a kid because you can't have the services. You can't get no services. Like I have a friend that's right now, she is going through so many problems because she have a child. They'll tell her, hey, we have room for you, but we don't have room for your son, or like you should have families. That's one of the main things that they put you on the top of list for housing is families, but you still have a lot of families homeless going through it. They can't get, like, if they get kicked out, they're with their sister or brother, they get kicked out tomorrow, they have nowhere to go.
So that's on these organizations and these agencies that are running these programs, because these are not laws, these are policies, yes. Right? These are policies and procedures that get created at these organizations. And I'm not going to name any of them so I don't get in trouble, but
I'm not either. But I will say that the adult system has gotten better, at least on the homeless side, of not using this readiness measure in the same way. I do not see that having translated to adults. I think that as adults who are providing services, a lot of times we approach this as we're going to now step in and be this young person's parent, and that's not what they're asking of us. And so it is not our job to put rules in place that we would put on our own children, which is often what I hear people say. That's not what this is, right? And I think that we need to have some come to the universe conversations about that as providers, the paternalism, and it has to stop, right? Because young people can vote with their feet, right? I think a lot of times people discredit youth voice because a lot of young people aren't yet eligible to vote or whatever, but y'all will just say, I'm not going, right? And so when I walk into a program and it's 6 kids and they're telling me, oh, well, we just can't get the young people here, that to me is saying something else.
I can speak to you why the young people, most young people don't vote because they might not be aware, and then they might feel like, oh, just because you telling me to go vote, it's not helping me at all. So why am I going to vote? Like it's not going to help me. They're going to do what they want. So why am I voting? And then a lot of people don't vote because they just don't want to go up there. They just feel like, oh, I ain't got no ID. I'm not going to go do all this extra stuff. I got stuff to do today. I'm not going to go vote for this. So they feel like it's not important to vote. I mean, they're not aware on the things that it could help for them if they get the right people in the office to do what they want. So yeah, and then
we're gonna raise the awareness.
So that leads right back into like the rights. I want you to like tell me 3 rights that youth should have in the system, like 3 rights.
Who's answering first?
I mean, I can answer.
Okay.
I can go first. From now on, every youth that is the age of 16, 15 and up should have an ID, should have a state official ID, or should be in the process of getting one.
Love it.
Yeah, I love that.
Love that. Annie?
I believe any youth who is either in transitional living or over the age of 18 out of care should automatically be qualified for food stamps, any type of government benefits, anything like that.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, we all co-sign that. I think based on my experience, I would say a young person should have the right to be involved in their case, no matter what system, and be in court for their hearings. I think that they should never be having a court case where that young person is not a part of that conversation in their planning.
And I think that young people should have their any of their juvenile charges automatically completely expunged on their 18th birthday. There are expungement laws in place, but it actually doesn't happen. And so we have young people every day that are going to apply for jobs and housing who, their juvenile records are popping up and they don't qualify for that. That is unjust. And that is something that should be an automatic right. You shouldn't have to go apply for it or take any extra steps. It should just occur as a matter of course. And that's the way it happens in some other jurisdictions. And that should happen here.
Yes.
All right. So we're at the last of the last. And just want to play a little game. They have this little this policy where they have the normal policy. What's normal, the normalcy. So I'm gonna play a little game. Tell me what's normal. So I'm basically gonna start off and tell you like what's the normal day for me when I was growing up, and y'all can just tell me or just think in your head. Just sit down when you get time to yourself. Just think about when you're a kid. What was the normal? What was normal for you that you would call your normal? Because no one's the same. So everybody normal is a different normal. And so I'm gonna start off. My normal day growing up would be. I would wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, probably. I had to make my bed up. My bed had to be made. If my bed wasn't made, I wasn't coming out of my room. I ate breakfast around 10, probably like 10 o'clock in the morning. It was med time, so they always had a med time between 11 and 12-ish. We had lunch around probably like 2 o'clock lunchtime. We had quiet time for 3 to 4. That was shift change. So everybody know you had to go to quiet time back on your bunk. And then we had rec time around from 4 to 5. After rec time, it was shower time. That was about from 7 to 8. And then bedtime was at 10. So that's my normal day. So how about tell us your normal day, Charles?
Now
When
or
you was a kid, like
when I
when
was
you were
growing
growing up. Well, can you remember what was your normal day?
Yeah, I am old, but I do remember that. Yeah. Well, the operative, and I don't often talk about this, but I'm among friends, so I can talk
Okay.
about that. So so I grew up in an alcoholic family, and so my home life was very chaotic because my dad was drunk all the time. I mean, just all the time. I don't have a memory of him when he wasn't drunk, and when he was drunk, he was mean. He was a mean drunk, and so daily life for me was trying to stay away from home as much as possible so that I didn't have to come home. So find friends' houses to hang out at as late as possible until I could sneak into the house and not be yelled at by my dad, or wait till he passed out. That was a challenge for me, which I think is where I get some of my ability to connect with experiences that are more challenging, because having grown up in that environment from the time that I was born. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic before I was born, so and it eventually killed him. But I think I can understand a little bit about what you're saying, because my world was not normal. I mean, well, what is normal? I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you, because, well, and I say this too. Like, I think it's unfair. Like, I grew up in a middle class neighborhood because my dad was a functional alcoholic, so he was able to keep a job. And so I would not have been labeled at risk in school. I would not have been put in at risk, which is terminology that I refuse to use and I object to as racist. But I would not have been, that would not have been a label that attached itself to me because of my background, right? But that's not fair. So because my normal was not any more normal than yours was, right? And but then what is normal? I mean, there is, I would argue that there's no such thing. Like, you might look at me and not understand that I had that experience because I don't go around talking about it. But I did, right? I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And you had the experience that you had. And you don't always talk about that. I mean, that's not who you are today. That, I mean, it informs who you are, but you are,
It just made me stronger.
well, yeah, I mean, you're a very strong man now, right? A leader. And so I think we have to be very careful when we use terms like normal. And I know the system does it. I know that's what you're referring to. The system does this normalcy check. And I think it's very challenging, because let's analyze everybody's real existence, and there's no such thing as normal, right?
Yes. I always say my husband had urban dysfunction and I had bougie dysfunction, right? So to Charles's point, most people thought I lived in an ideal family set of circumstances, and I didn't. And so I also tried to avoid home just because of my parents' marital situation, and it just always just feeling like a lot. And thankfully, like a lot of other young people, I had a grandmother who was amazing. And my grandmother was my safe space.
Shout out to the grandmothers, because I had one too.
Grandmothers. And then I kind of got another grandmother because my grandmother died when I was 9, which was it completely decimated my family because she was the glue of our family. And when she died, like, everybody just lost it. We lost our family cohesion and our coming together for holidays. And then my great aunt, who was like my grandmother's best friend, she had no grandchildren, so she became my second grandmother. And from that moment until she died when I was in my late 20s, she was that presence for me, right? And so I think that I always admire chosen family, because there are people who come into your life who keep you sane and who lift you up and encourage you, and they don't have to be blood related to you. And so as an adult, I have chosen family. I call them my best sisters, who are the women in my life who text me, they check on me, we travel together. When I'm having a breakdown and I just can't take it another day, I could call them And so for me, normalcy was all about building the safety that I needed, the way that I could, right? And I had a mother who didn't have a lot of formal education, but was driven to get us education. She found every free program. I was at Parks and Rec. I was at the free summer school. Like, she found any resource possible, and it allowed me to have experiences that a lot of my peers did not have. And so in my family, she is like Hail Mary, because the sacrifices that she made for us to get my brother and I to get the education that we got, has allowed us a life that she could only imagine, right? And so I feel a lot of gratitude, but I agree with Charles and with you that normalcy is not real, because we all put up masks to survive the best that we can. And I feel like a lot of young people who have been involved in systems, people take their masks off without their permission. Like, you don't owe me your story. You don't have to ever tell me your story. I should be able to show up for you without having any of that. And so as adults who do this work, I think we have to stop trying to take young people's masks off to feel like then we can advocate for them to have stability and the justice that they deserve in our community.
Yes.
Normal day.
Normal day, normalcy, however you want to do it.
Okay. Well, my normal day from about age 15 to about, well, no, let's say 13 to about the day I turned 18. So that was pretty much inside of a cell, inside of a cell, waiting for the next meal because there's nothing else to focus on. Only interaction is with the guard coming to sign the door, unless that day they blessed you with coming out to see all the other people in juvenile. It was very sad. Yeah, that's very sad. So normalcy to me, for a child who is in a CPS system or juvenile justice, like, already their life isn't normal already. So as soon as they go out in public, they're gonna see people and families and things like that, and they're gonna want that. But the places that they're sent like to take away a lot of things. Like, they do not get cell phones. They do not get contact with people they want to actually contact with. They have to stay on campus. They have to wear uniforms. And I see some efforts and some placements trying to make normalcy a thing, but I don't think they really understand because they don't always ask, like, what is normal to you? Because already they never really had normal. So.
All right, thank you.
I just want to give you positive feedback. That was a great question. And I like that you're thinking so deeply about these issues, and you got all of us to open up with stuff that we would not have normally. Yeah, right. I wouldn't normally say that. So I just shout out to the host.
Mom, I didn't
Charles.
mean what I said. I take it back.
And we're gonna wrap up, but I just want to give last thoughts, last remarks on the day. We had a good show. Tune in later on. We're gonna have a podcast once every month. It's gonna be youth led, so we're gonna try to bring youth in. We're gonna try to. I'm not gonna stop saying try. We are gonna bring youth in. We're gonna have people from DFPS. We're gonna have people from all over just come and speak on different topics. Awareness is for the youth, so we're trying to get youth awareness, get them to let them know what's going on. Like, they need to know that they're important, and we care for them, and everybody cares for them, and they are the next coming up. Generational change. Remember that. Change the generation. You got to start somewhere with the generation that's coming up. So let's go.
Thank you.
Good stuff.